Welcome back to another episode in our template design series, and today we're going to look at the Punchbowl, which is a green complex that's basically applied typically to a par 4 or a par 5, occasionally on a long par 3, and it tends to be used on longer holes rather than shorter ones. We're going to look at what makes this hole design tick, when you might want to use it, and how you might want to make it interesting, and really above all, why this is so different to any other green complex you might have seen. So you join us here at Springbrook Country Club, and we're looking at the fifth hole, which is the Punchbowl Green Complex. And true to form, imagine it is a bowl. That's basically what happens. Essentially on a punch bowl, almost every slope funnels the ball back onto the green. So what's this designed to do, and when might you try to use it? Well, firstly, it's designed to reward or help shots that are good but not great, or in this game maybe average but not good. As you can see, a shot trickling in down the left hand side that's miles off target will hit these slopes and funnel towards the pin. Most of the pins typically in the middle, and you'll be able to see that it's going to help you come a lot closer than maybe you would have done otherwise. And that's particularly good because it's a rewarding green complex when so many other green complexes you see green complexes kind of shed the ball away and the edges roll off. So it very much does help. When would you typically choose to use this? Well, it tends to be paired with a longer hole. So we're looking at the 500 odd yard par 4. That's when I really think about using a Punchbowl green complex, because you're saying, yep, you've got a long approach, you're going to be less precise, hit it into an area and let the land do the work and bring the ball close. So with that in mind, how do you then make it interesting? I think the first thing that you do, we'll just hit a shot as we go. You've got to make the tee shot interesting, or the second shot interesting. So with this one on the fifth at Springbrook, it looks like a very open fairway, which it is, but it's also very undulating, as you can tell by the lie grid. Therefore, although it's not as long as some others, we're going to be less precise because of that. So the fact that the ball might be going off in slightly different directions, particularly with the with any wind that comes on, means that we don't have to be as precise into these greens, because the green slope is going to help the ball backwards. So we can aim somewhere over here, trust that whatever we do, the green's going to do the work for us. And therefore, usually, I'm hoping this is just going to go up to the back and then gently comes back on down. And then you're left with a decent makeable putt. So how do you make this interesting when everything is helper? Firstly, on a Punchbowl green complex, I might look to really ramp up the challenge on the tee shot. Joe used this in the middle of a string of tougher, more difficult holes. So actually this, although the length of the hole would look really tricky, on this hole, potentially the green is helping you out. Secondly, you want to go for a lot of internal contouring if you can. So close and in and around the pins, you might want to have some trickier slopes. We've got some light green slopes right around this pin, which means that even if we get inside 10 feet, it's not necessarily a gimme. There's a little bit of a tier halfway through. There's some subtle mounds in the side, so if we have a look from this angle, you've got a couple of little spines leaking into it, and you've got some interest at the front where the ball's being propelled on as well. So to get a birdie, you still have to be quite precise, particularly if say the pin's down here. You can't be going too far, or you've got a very difficult putt down, but it shouldn't be too hard to make par. And that's really the essence of a Punchbowl green, I think. It's trying to make par manageable on a longer hole. And I think that's the best way I'd understand it. We can look at a couple of other examples and then how you might use this in a bit more of an interesting or different fashion. Back to Charleston Hall, and the sixth hole for the Punchbowl I think is one of the best renditions of this that I've seen, but purely because of how the green complex really filters all the way back to the tee. So you can see immediately that everything filters the ball in. It's a very receptive green, and it's on a par 5, which may seem slightly at odds with what you typically think of, because as said in other videos, you mainly look at this sort of complex on a long par 4 or somewhere where you want to reward trickier long approaches. Where I think this works really well is psychologically, because we know that it's a par 5, we know that this green is very receptive, we desperately want to be able to go through it in 2, and therefore you can really ramp up the pressure on the tee shot, because I know that if I'm laying up on the tee shot and it's a tight little bit of fairway to try to hit, but I desperately want to go for this green in 2, so I'm going to try to take that on no matter what. Whereas if we're laying back, well, you're taking away the chance of hitting that green in 2 and losing that potential eagle opportunity, which is a real possibility on this hole, particularly I'd say if the pin is on the left hand side. On the right, because of the fact that we're wanting to play to the right hand side of the fairway, we're coming in more over these slopes. Right is going to be slightly trickier. Where I think it gets even better still is, let's say we decide not to go for it. So we take 3 wood off the tee. Well, by heading to about 270 odd, we're then looking at 311 to flag. We're probably not clearing that body of water, so therefore we're laying up most likely. So you definitely don't want to do that. But then think about where you're laying up. If you're too close, you're probably leaving that pitch shot. So that's where these cross bunkers come into play. And if you're laying up short of those, you're looking at 6 iron in. So everything pushes us towards taking this option on. And so how's he defended that? Well, there's a little bit of camber, which means if we're going right and falling off the fairway, even from there, having been here before, the layup option from here is not easy. You're having to fade it around the tight tree line. There's bunkers in the way. There's water long. You can get very messy very quickly on this hole. Whereas bunker left, I'd say you're hacking out, but at least there's nothing in your way. It's probably a better miss left than it is right. So, like I say, I think this green complex can be used really well to filter all the way back to the tee and make you know that you want to go for it in 2. So here, looking at the 16th, we're going to look at a little bit of a spin on the Punchbowl. Now, first of all, you'll notice the length. It's a short par 4, which is completely the opposite to what I've just been saying about playing a long hole. You can use this by giving a really risky tee shot. So here, trying to carry the whole way over could potentially feed the ball onto the green, and then you're really rewarded with a potential eagle if you can make that very heroic carry. If you're laying up, well, you can also feel free to lay way back here. And to be honest, if I was redoing this hole again, I'd have lost this bunker. And then, okay, you're blind, but you've got a relatively safe shot into a pretty friendly green. You'll see again, there is that bold internal contouring. You've got this slight mound / spine. You've got some kicker slopes. You've got a relatively fast slope here, and you've got tricky pin positions in between some of them. Some of them kind of bowling in like this one. Some of them on tough slopes where you'll want to be rewarding precision even with this green complex that's going to feed balls back onto the surface. Now, with that green complex, the idea was really to encourage people to take on that risky tee shot, because they know that if they can just crest that hill, they've got a chance of running down onto the green. The second spin is that it's not really a full punch bowl. It's got 2 drainage points. So you've got one at the back here where the ball can run out, and you've got one here as well. And those were deliberately placed for certain angles. So if you crossed over here, you've got a wedge shot, and potentially you could run long. Same to this one if you're going a little bit long from down here. So most of the same concepts still apply, but occasionally you might want to put a little bit of a twist on it. But bear in mind what you're trying to do when doing this. I was trying to entice people to go for the green, and basically it was in the middle of a string of really tough holes. You want the odd breather, and it's absolutely fine and encouraged to have the odd birdie hole. Just don't make it an auto birdie. So we're going to finish up here again at Strathlorne with the 5th hole, which is a 500 odd yard uphill par 4. So the perfect candidate based on what we said at the start for a punch bowl. It's got a very wide open accommodating fairway. That's partly because of the length of the hole, as well as the fact that I wanted really everyone to take a shot at this green. You've then got this fun kind of elevated green complex over the punch bowl, and you've got this kind of rocky outcropping that you have to cover, and then you see the green. So you're really, first of all, encouraged to hit into this open expanse. So why is this a twist on a punch bowl? Well, you'll see from the green slopes that in addition to being a punch bowl, it's kind of all flowing from left to right. So it was really, first of all, encouraging you to shoot into an area and hit your long approach somewhere around here, and it's really a question of how high up you're hitting. So there's a little bit of a reverse Redan in there as well, which is a template we'll come to, but you can see that if it's really offline, the ball's going to be filtered back onto the green, whether you're coming from short right, from long right, you'll be feeding down. Basically the only place you can't go is dead at this pin. So the tee shot on this hole is really just a setup shot. You've got a big mound in the middle of the fairway, which really just redirects the ball down towards this side. You can use it to access the right hand side of the fairway because you can't necessarily carry this bunker unless really downwind. The right hand side of the fairway is shorter as an approach, but you do have that bunker to contend with. On the left hand side you've got a slightly flatter approach. You're also kind of hitting down the green, and the ball's going to kind of veer more right, whereas if you're coming from the left hand side you're probably hitting into these slopes and slowing it up a little bit. So it's kind of a case of choice rather than you must go one way or another. So pretty much anywhere you hit doesn't really matter too much, it's just a setup shot, although you do get slightly different shots from both sides. But this was the shot, and part of the reason for that was I wanted everyone to have a chance to hit this shot. I think it's one of the most fun ones on the course. And then you get this, and for me this was all about releasing the ball into the green and watching the ball roll. So for this pin I'm never looking at trying to carry it all the way. You can do, by all means, but it's way more fun to just let the ball roll down the slopes and finish up somewhere close. So you could even hit as little as a 6-iron, bounce it here and just watch it run on through. But again, we're looking at those internal contours. You've got this little spine here and here which could redirect towards a pin here, so actually the shorter you play, somewhere around here, it's going to kind of filter through these slopes and end up about there. If you're going for the pin up here, well, you want to end up somewhere on here, but then again, if you go too far up this slope, it hits in and rolls in with some speed. You could end up all the way down the bottom. So it's really still demanding a bit of precision, but also you're going to find it pretty hard to make bogey on this hole. So we're going to play this and just see where it ends up. There's a little bit of a left to right slope, and we've hit a slope which isn't ideal, but watch the ball kick in off this slope and you'll see kind of the punch bowl in action. So as mentioned, it's really a pretty generous green complex, and it does give you a number of ways to get the ball close, as well as providing a little bit of margin for error that maybe you don't get on other greens. There are going to be some pins that are friendlier than others, but generally it's just that little bit different of like a helpful green, and that can offer some subtlety as well. So that's our Punchbowl green, and hopefully you've got some ideas as to how and when you might look to use this. Particularly good on a long par 4 or a par 5 to add a little bit of friendliness and receptiveness to greens where you're asking for a long approach shot, but it doesn't need to uniquely be used for that. Now there are some really good Punchbowl greens that we aren't looking at in this video, partly because this is often paired as a template with the Alps template, and we're going to look at those in a future episode. But until then, I hope that this has been useful. Thank you very much for watching, and see you again soon.